Chapter 313. Blood Sarira. Mo Fan would not believe any of Zhang Yi's bullshit. The woman might seem to be a bystander, trying to be reasonable with him, but he clearly remembered that she was the one responsible for killing Qingqing and Zhao Mingyue at the start. Mo Fan believed that Zhang Yi still had some conscience as a battle mage deep inside her bones, but its ratio was like a thumb mark to an entire heart that had turned black. He would survive the experiment? Enough with the jokes. It was not like Mo Fan had not witnessed the pain of the girls when they were taken over by the mother-scale skin phantom. It was not like he had not witnessed the torture that Xu Jiaoting had gone through when he was turned into a cursed beast. The only way Mo Fan would surrender was to someone like Tang Yue, who had big boobs and buttocks, who was sexy and strong at the same time, not to some female battle mage who had dark skin, a large face, and a totally darkened heart. Mo Fan hated people like her the most, trying to sound so righteous to justify their inhumane actions. Just admit that you're scum and a heartless maniac. Stop with the meaningless struggle. If you waste any more time, even I won't be able to save you. Zhang Yi yelled. Even if you all are dead, I'll still be standing here. Try and get me on your own. Otherwise, stop screaming like a bitch. These damned lizards. Do you really have the lineage of the dragons? How stupid can you all be? Were you born the same way as that crossbreed scum, Lu Nian? There are so many juicy humans over there, but you have to come to me instead. Mo Fan stood above a pile of debris and yelled out. It was how he had always tried to relax from the pressure of life-threatening danger. Zhang Yi felt her lips contorting. This kid was rather special, being able to curse both humans and lizards at the same time. Fine, I'll wait until you finally give up. The demon beasts had the same routine with their attacks. They would first send some pawns to consume the magician's energy. Once they began to feel the fatigue, the warrior-level tyrant lizards would then show themselves. Judging from the situation, the tyrant lizards would show up sometime soon. Mo Fan, who was totally on his own, would definitely beg for her assistance. There was no way he would be a warrior who could take death calmly. Even though the new element relies on the lineage of the mutating species to alter the human's flesh, it won't be as bizarre as the Black Vatican's inhumane curses. You won't die, and you won't end up like a monster either. Zhang Yi said, what has been the biggest weakness for the humans, and for the magicians? Clearly, it was the fact that we don't have strong enough bodies. The mutating beasts were able to mutate the humans and give them flesh that was as strong as the demon beast. Therefore, after many experiments, we finally invented the blood Sarira, which can alter a magician's body. It would grant you incredible might, and if you were to merge with a certain kind of beast, you would possess inhuman powers. You could even fight against the demon beasts with your bare hands, without relying on magic. Zhang Yi continued trying to brainwash Mo Fan. She was trying to let Mo Fan know how marvelous their experiment was. How significant would it be if humans were able to fight against demons with their bare hands? It would mean there was no longer any difference between an ordinary human and a magician. Ordinary people would be able to fight against the demon beasts, while the magicians would become even stronger with the new strength. Lu Nian had gone crazy because the experiment was too appealing to them. It would bring a chance for the entire world once it succeeded. Therefore, no matter the consequences, they were willing to do it, even when the government tried to stop them, even if it were banned by the Magic Association across the 5 continents, and they were blacklisted by the Hunter Union. If it's really that useful, why don't you try it on yourself? I believe you can easily find lots of crazy people like Lu Nian himself. Mo Fan was busily dealing with the giant lizards. It took him quite some time before he had a chance to respond. The test subjects in the past were all volunteers. We've still got many volunteers now, but they are all doomed to fail. Using the blood Sarira on them either turned them into a mindless monster, or dry corpses when their energy was completely drawn away. Zhang Yi replied. Mo Fan finally had a chance to catch his breath. The swift star wolf had managed to drive the tyrant lizard away and come back to his side, giving him a chance to rest up slightly. As he was doing so, he cast a side glance at Zhang Yi, who was being protected by the soldiers. Fellow advisor, if you find it hard to pursue your dreams in the army, I would recommend a new role for you. This position has great benefits, and will provide you with double identities and many subordinates too, with countless holidays. The people taking up the role have remarkable ambitions, and the way they do things are similar to you, too. Luckily, I'm quite familiar with the people of the Black Vatican, too. I don't think they would ever forget me. I can ask someone to introduce you to them. They will surely welcome you with open arms. They can even save some time in trying to brainwash you. Don't you mix us with those scum from the Black Vatican? Zhang Yi screamed, as if the words had pierced through her heart. Maybe she knew in her heart that what they were doing was similar to the Black Vatican, but she was not willing to admit it. She was fulfilling a sacred duty as a soldier. Zhang Yi took a deep breath, her face shuddering. She was trying her best to control her emotions, trying to observe her surroundings with a calm mind. More giant lizards had shown up in the direction they were planning to retreat to. It would be even more difficult to clear a path if they were totally surrounded by the giant lizards. The blood Sarira will take in different levels of energy, depending on the magician. An intermediate magician only has 2 nebulas, but the energy that the blood Sarira required was more than that of 2 nebulas, so the magician's soul could not withstand the burden. Zhang Yi continued, if too much energy was drawn away, it would result in a huge impact to their soul, collapsing it in the end. However, without enough energy, the new element won't activate. Hence why you found me, just because I have double innate elements. Mo Fan laughed grimly. That explained it all. The blood Sarira would need to draw out a huge amount of energy, which would always surpass the limit of its bearer. If the bearer were a basic level magician, it would draw more than a nebula's energy. If the bearer were an intermediate magician, it would draw more than 2 nebulas' energy. If the bearer were an advanced magician, it would draw more than 3 nebulas' energy. Furthermore, the difference margin would surely be significant, as it was overwhelming enough for the magicians to lose their rational thinking, collapse their souls, or dry out their flesh. He had double innate elements. He was the only person in the world who would have more energy than an ordinary magician. Therefore, he was deemed the best test subject. You had the highest chance to succeed. Theoretically, it would only cause your cultivation to decline, but it won't cost you your life. Zhang Yi added. Time was running out. She had to convince Mo Fan to surrender. Otherwise, even she would not be able to guarantee their safety. Is that the same thing you told those who died? Mo Fan inquired coldly. Zhang Yi fell silent. As a matter of fact, she did say the same thing to the test subjects who had ended up dead, including her own brother who had volunteered himself. He had died a horrible death. His eyes were full of hatred for his own sister. She could still see his eyes at night every time she closed hers. It would only make their cultivation decline? Even she had believed the nonsense. Chapter 314. Breaking Through, Escaping from Danger. Mo Fan glanced at the soldiers. Luckily for him, more giant lizards were attracted to their group. Several of the tyrant lizards were launching their attacks at the temporary fortress they had set up, too. Otherwise, he would have lost his ground long ago. Glancing ahead, the number of the giant lizards did not seem to dwindle. He could not even see the end of the street due to the beasts swarming in his direction. He had no idea how many dens of the giant lizards were awakened by his fiery fist, or maybe it was because the giant lizards had also summoned their comrades after mere humans dared to trespass into their territory. Mo Fan panted heavily. His supply of energy was still sufficient, but he was having trouble keeping up with the speed of the giant lizards. His electric field did control the giant lizards within 20 meters that were trying to attack him, but there were so many of them that they were able to use the bodies of their paralyzed comrades as stepping stones. Their fangs were within reach. They could easily smash him into mush with their tails. This is bad. I will surely die at this rate. Mo Fan clenched his teeth and glanced into the sky. Swift Star Wolf, buy me some time. Don't let any of the giant lizards get close to me, Mo Fan said. The Swift Star Wolf quickly glanced at the surrounding giant lizards. Fortunately, the tyrant lizards did not seem to be interested in them. If it were only the giant lizards, he could help hold them back for a period of time. He nodded, telling Mo Fan to carry on with his plan. Mo Fan trusted the Swift Star Wolf. He sat down with his legs crossed above the debris. He began to meditate. He had decided to gamble. His Fire Element's nebula had been refined the most in the 3-step tower. Since then, he had been actively involved in battles and training. He could feel that he was close to arriving at the doorstep of the 3rd tier. Even though trying to have a breakthrough while being surrounded by demon beasts was extremely risky, Mo Fan believed that his talents were easily aroused in situations like this, where his life was in danger. As such, he would have to rely on the Swift Star Wolf to look after him for the time being. Oh woo, The swift star wolf raised its head and uttered a deafening howl into the sky. A great tornado began to sweep around his body. Its scale was significantly bigger than the one before, with stronger wind. It was slowly turning into a sandstorm as it gathered its momentum. The tornado rolled forward and swept the giant lizards along its trajectory into the air. The sands spinning inside it might be tiny, but at such incredible speed, were like bullets that could penetrate walls. The sand bullets ground away at the demon beasts, producing a bloody mist inside the tornado. It had turned into a killing sandstorm. The street, the advertisement boards, and the walls of the shops nearby were heavily damaged. The densely packed holes looked like they were left by a rain of arrows. The troop of giant lizards ended up as dead bodies full of holes, their flesh splattered everywhere. Their thick skin stood no chance against the rapid firing of the sand bullets. A huge number of giant lizards were killed in this bizarre manner. Previously, the swift star wolf was only fighting the giant lizards in close-quarters combat, as casting a spell with a huge area of effect like this would consume a significant amount of his energy. The swift star wolf panted heavily after casting the 1,000-piercing sandstorm. However, the attack was super efficient, as it had instantly killed dozens of giant lizards in a certain direction. The giant lizards were not agile, due to their bulky size. Swarming toward them in large packs, the attack turned out to be rather efficient. The number of giant lizards had slightly decreased. More precisely, the number of giant lizards who could still move had greatly reduced, as the corpses of the giant lizards dropped heavily onto those that were still alive, knocking them to the ground. The swift star wolf was utterly attentive to the duty he had been given. In order to ensure that no beast could get closer to Mo Fan, he continuously attacked with spells that would consume a significant amount of energy, holding the giant lizards back. Mo Fan was aware that time was precious. The swift star wolf would not be able to hold on for too long. The fire element nebula burned blazingly in his spiritual world, like an everlasting sun. However, it was still lacking more heat. Mo Fan wanted it to be stronger, to be more vigorous. Daddy has been very kind to you all. Now that my life is in danger, can you stop going into a huff and expand your territory to the neighbor kindergartens, please? Mo Fan went all out with his ironic humor. As a matter of fact, he was feeling extremely nervous. Holding his breath and calming his thoughts, Mo Fan began to focus on his breakthrough. All his focus was gathered on the fire element nebula. He was guiding his spiritual force to support the entire nebula. The nebula used the force to expand, like a galaxy of stars trying to conquer the void and darkness nearby, allowing its brilliance to reach further. The entire process required the magician to drive their spiritual force. If it were described as a tide, in order for the nebula and its energy storage to expand, it had to splash upon the chaotic wall of the nearby darkness and break the chains restricting it, thus allowing the stars to rise to a higher level. Mo Fan did not have much time for several attempts. He had to accomplish it within a few seconds. Otherwise, he would have no choice but to surrender to that mentally disordered woman. Why would he surrender? In Mo Fan's opinion, death was definitely the final resort. He considered using death to proclaim pride a cowardly act. Instead of using death to escape from reality, it was more heroic to stay alive and bear the burden. Oh woo! The swift star wolf howled to signal Mo Fan that time was running out. It was not because he had failed to hold the giant lizards off, but because his rather powerful attacks had attracted a tyrant lizard nearby. Once the tyrant lizard engaged them, the swift star wolf would have to fully focus on the battle against it, which meant that the giant lizards would be able to climb up the debris and eat Mo Fan alive. On the other side, Zhang Yi had joined the battle, too. There were more people in her group, thus they had attracted more giant lizards to them. Her soldiers began to have trouble handling the situation on their own. If Zhang Yi continued to be a bystander, there would be casualties soon. However, Zhang Yi was aware that Mo Fan was in a pinch, too. Is he out of his mind, trying to expand his nebula here? Damn it! Zhang Yi clenched her teeth and forcefully fought her way out from the formation. She could not let Mo Fan die, at all costs. He was their final hope for the experiment of the blood Sarira. Advisor Zhang! The soldiers cried out in panic when they saw Zhang Yi breaking away from the formation. Don't mind me, just protect yourselves. I'll go and save him. Hold your formation. We'll have to clear a path out of here soon. Zhang Yi ordered. Affirmative. The soldiers clenched their teeth and held their ground as they helped Zhang Yi clear a path. As Zhang Yi advanced 100 meters forward, a blazing hot rose flame rose from the debris ahead. The light from the fire dyed the entire street red, as the overwhelming heat spread toward the surroundings like a wave. Zhang Yi raised her head from among the giant lizards in astonishment. She could sense strong fiery energy coming from Mo Fan, completely different than before. Chapter 315. 9 Hall's Fiery Fist. How is this? How was he able to make a breakthrough in this situation? Zhang Yi was utterly astounded. Even the most daring soldiers in their ranks would not dare to act so boldly after being surrounded by demon beasts. A magician could not be disturbed by any external factor during the process, as they had to put 100% focus on it. He was surrounded by hundreds of giant lizards, who could easily take his life with a single bite. Wasn't he worried that the swift star wolf would fail to protect him, allowing just a single giant lizard to break through? Didn't he doubt that his life would be at risk while he was trying to expand his nebula? The fiery rose flame burst out above the debris, engulfing his entire body. His appearance, similar to burning lava, was more imposing than the heat of the flames. Swift Star Wolf, well done. Leave it all to me. Mo Fan wore a smile. It was relatively wild under the illumination of the flames. The Swift Star Wolf quickly withdrew to Mo Fan's side. The raging flames were quickly withdrawn under Mo Fan's control, including the heat waves surging toward the surroundings and the fire spreading across the ground. They were rapidly drawn to his right wrist. His wrist was wrapped by a ring of flames, which were swaying slowly to the wind. Rose Flame. Fiery Fist. Mo Fan's hair was standing upright in the overflowing flow of energy. Even his eyes burned like fire in the process. He threw a mighty punch from the top of the debris. An enormous amount of energy was directed straight into the ground. The energy was transferred at an insane speed. The surrounding ground began to crack open, as if it could not hold the energy within it. 9 Halls. The energy finally reached its limit. Under Mo Fan's ferocious roar, pillars of flames began to spurt upward in the area 100 meters around him. The pillars of flame were bursting out from deep beneath the ground. Not only did they cause lava to surge to the surface, they had also transformed into burning pillars. The first one appeared right on Mo Fan's body. The flames rising from his body sprang into the air. The second pillar appeared a great distance ahead. The two pillars were around 30 meters apart, but it felt like the area between the two pillars was being utterly destroyed. The third pillar appeared behind Mo Fan, which was parallel to the pillar on Mo Fan's body and the pillar in front of him. Another great explosion took place. 3 pillars parallel to the ones that had sprouted from the ground appeared on both sides as the ground cracked open once again, which meant there were 6 other fire pillars bursting into the air from underground. 9 Halls. The 9 pillars were the formation of 9 halls. The fiery pillars were bright red due to the rose flame. The giant lizards were gradually burned into ashes, regardless of if they were alive or dead. The pillars were around 5 or 6 floors high. The giant lizards looked incredibly tiny and helpless before them. Zhang Yi was also an intermediate magician who had ranked up to the 3rd tier, but she did not have a soul seed. Mo Fan's soul seed had made his fiery fist, 9 halls, extremely powerful. It was strong enough to annihilate an entire giant lizard's den. They were still surrounded by the giant lizards, but Mo Fan's surroundings were totally empty, with no sign of flesh or corpses, just piles of black ashes. On a side note, there was a warrior-level tyrant lizard among the troops of giant lizard. It had been confidently making its way toward its prey, but after its whole body was scorched by the fiery fist, 9 halls, it immediately fled for its life. Even a tyrant lizard with an outstanding defense was unable to endure the damage from the fiery fist, 9 halls. It would share the same fate as the giant lizards if it did not run away in time. The giant lizards surrounding Mo Fan seemed to be commandeered by the tyrant lizard that had fled. As their commander ran away, the giant lizards in the distance remained in place with blank faces. None of them were daring enough to move forward. This is our chance, time to run. Mo Fan climbed onto the Swift Star Wolf's back while the giant lizards were dazzled. The space around the Swift Star Wolf was more than enough for him to gather his momentum up for a sprint. He dashed forward and used the scorched ground as a springboard, jumping onto the collapsed building nearby. He ran across the roof before dropping down. Even though the path below was densely packed with giant lizards, the fearless Swift Star Wolf ran across using their bodies as stepping stones for a short distance. The giant lizards revealed their fangs and tried to snap at him. There were times when Mo Fan almost felt that the Swift Star Wolf's tail was being bitten, but in the end, he was too fast for the sluggish giant lizards, who only ended up biting the air and the fur on the Swift Star Wolf's tail. The Swift Star Wolf only sprinted across the giant lizards for 3 seconds, but the fear and excitement from it urged Mo Fan to curl his legs upwards subconsciously. "Brother, don't pull such a prank on me next time. I almost shit my pants." The Swift Star Wolf turned the corner and arrived at another street covered in shadows, with only a few giant lizards around. Mo Fan instantly released the Swift Star Wolf into the summoning plane. He hugged the walls and immediately cast Fleeing Shadow. Mo Fan had been keeping an eye out at the sky throughout the whole battle. He was not pretending to be an artistic, emotional young man before his death. He was waiting for the sun to poke out from the clouds. The buildings would only cast shadows when there was sunlight. Mo Fan had disappeared around the corner, and when the giant lizards chasing after them reached the spot, they had already lost sight of the human and the wolf. Meanwhile, the giant lizards who were being attracted to the street due to the sounds produced from the battle had not seen Mo Fan and the Swift Star Wolf, nor did they notice a lump of shadow moving between the buildings. They continued to move toward the group of soldiers who were busy killing their comrades. Zhang Yi had seen Mo Fan disappearing around the corner. However, by the time she reached there, Mo Fan was no longer there. He had vanished into thin air. Even though he had only turned the corner, and the entire street was still filled with giant lizards, the demon beasts were only rushing toward her men. They did not act as if they had seen anyone rushing past them. "He's gone?" Zhang Yi stared into the distance in disbelief. Zhang Yi initially assumed that there was an element of luck when she learned that the kid had saved Bo City and fought back against the Black Vatican. However, she was more convinced that that was not the case now. She had lost sight of Mo Fan. Her instincts were telling her that Mo Fan had escaped with some hidden abilities. She would be able to track him down eventually, but the problem was, her troop was still surrounded by the giant lizards. She did not even know if they could make it out alive. Chapter 316. Just in time, Zan Kong. "Crap, a pack of tyrant lizards are heading toward us," a soldier who was in charge of observing the surroundings blurted out. The giant lizards would never be able to break through their defense. After all, they were battle mages who had gone through countless battles. They knew how to exploit the weaknesses of the demon beasts to set up a temporary fortress. However, the tyrant lizards were a completely different story. Each tyrant lizard that had appeared would inflict some damage to their formation. They would need a couple of intermediate spells to hold them off. However, a pack of tyrant lizards was definitely a nightmare for them. They were all trying to hold the overwhelming number of giant lizards back. Who would have the spare firepower to deal with the tyrant lizards? Seeing the pack of tyrant lizards taking up half of the street with their different colored skins, indicating the element they possessed, the soldiers could no longer remain as calm as before, as death was just around the corner. "Clear a path, now," Zhang Yi demanded. They had to break free from the demon beasts. Otherwise, their entire troop would be wiped out here. Meanwhile, Mo Fan had used the Fleeing Shadow to distance himself from the main street. He was still at the center of Jinlan City, but for some reason, the buildings nearby had all collapsed. The whole place was full of debris. He could not see the end of it with a glance. There was no swamp nearby. Although he could still see the towering nest in the distance, there were barely any giant lizards nearby. Mo Fan stood on the remains of an observation tower and looked at the soldiers who were slowly drowning among the demon beasts. He could imagine the fear replacing their arrogant looks. He could also imagine the disbelief on Zhang Yi's face when she lost sight of him. This bunch of idiots still thought they stood a chance against him. They would never expect him to be a shadow magician, too. He could easily move around as long as there were shadows near him. The giant lizards were extremely slow with their reactions. They would never notice him when he was using their shadows to move around. It was the main reason why Mo Fan had decided to venture deep into their territory. Most importantly, he had managed to rank up. Mo Fan now understood why many of their seniors had encouraged the younger magicians to have more battles against the demon beasts. Meditating was indeed important, but the best way to improve a human's potential was through fighting. If he weren't surrounded by the demon beasts, Mo Fan believed that he would have needed at least another half a year to improve his fire nebula to the 3rd tier. Fiery Fist. 9 halls. I've finally mastered such a domineering attack. Mo Fan clenched his right fist as he recalled the destruction wrought by the giant fire pillars. He still remembered his first time seeing the attack from Tong Yue. Back then, Tong Yue was so powerful that Mo Fan had the urge to bow before her. She might have reached a greater height by now, but at least he had caught up to her strength back then. Besides, she was an agent of the magic courts. Leaning back, Mo Fan began to take a rest. He was slightly worn out from the battle before. Now that he was safe, he was not in a rush to leave, since he was interested in admiring the fate of the evil battle mages when they ended up dead. What's that? Mo Fan realized a pair of white wings were flapping in the sky. He gathered his thoughts and glanced ahead, taking a clearer look. The following second, his body began to tremble as if he had been struck by lightning. It was a heavenly eagle with a pair of snowy white wings, slightly bigger than an ordinary one. It was flapping its wings as it soared across the sky above Jinlin City. Its claws were extremely huge, and were carrying a giant net. 4 people were trapped inside the net. It looked like they had lost control of their minds. They were utterly helpless against the net and were being dragged around like little chicks. Their eyes were looking at their surroundings helplessly. Mo Fan was utterly familiar with them, as they were Zhao Manting, Mu Nujiao, Mu Ningzhu, and Bai Tingting. Flames of anger ignited within Mo Fan's heart. He finally realized why Lu Nian was not going after him. It turned out that the devil was chasing after his friends. He was hanging them in the air just to display his bargaining chips. Mo Fan was exceedingly furious. How could someone be so despicable? If he could turn his anger into fire around his fist, he would surely have smashed that son of a bitch's face with his bare hands. Mo Fan, I'll only say this once, whether you can hear it or not. Come and kneel in front of me at once. Otherwise, I'll be throwing them down from this height. Don't you worry, I've sealed their souls. I can guarantee you that they won't be able to cast a single spell during the fall. According to my experience, even a warrior-level demon beast will be smashed into minced meat from this height. Forget about the little kid from the Zhao family who's on the verge of dying after I've beaten the crap out of him. However, it would be a pity for the girl with the ice element who's still unconscious. I believe she's very important to you. If that's not good enough, how about the 3 of them together? Lu Nian's devil-like voice echoed in the sky. He had purposely enhanced his voice with his magic, making sure that it would spread to every corner of the city. As Mo Fan heard the words, flames uncontrollably burst out under his feet. He could no longer control the rage inside him. Even the outrageous Black Vatican had never made him so angry before. He never thought it would be a person wearing the uniform of a battle mage. Mo Fan, this devil will still kill us even after you've shown yourself. Go back to the capital, to the Magic City. You have to let the Enforcement Union and the army know what happened here. Zhao Manting, who was severely injured, let out a scream. He was unable to yell out with magic, as his soul was being sealed. He could only scream at the top of his voice, hoping Mo Fan could hear him somewhere down there. That being said, there was no chance Mo Fan could hear him due to the height. Bai Tingting and Mu Nujiao remained silent. Their ears were filled with the echoes of Lu Nian's terrible laughter. Up in the sky, a great burst of wind swept forward, parting the clouds in a blue line. A pair of wind wings slowly appeared in the blue sky, as a man wearing a wind jacket embroidered with a different pattern on its back flew toward the city rapidly. The man had a handsome, stubbled face. Although his collars were upright, an obvious scar going across his neck all the way to his chest could still be seen. Lu Nian, you've committed a terrible crime. Let go of the students at once. The man approached the giant heavenly eagle and snapped furiously.